Okay, so I'm pretty sure we are the only people crazy enough to try and do a historical drama, period drama movie of feature film length with no budget filming on an iPhone. Just about anybody who has any kind of penchant for period drama movies will probably know Far From the Madding Crowd with Carey Mulligan in it. No. The film is based on a book by author Thomas Hardy. Hardy was a prolific writer in the 19th century, and he wrote over 1,000 poems and around 14-ish novels, as well as many volumes of short stories.
Hello, I'm Tracy Hayes. I'm the secretary of the Thomas Hardy Society, among other things, and he obviously is my favourite author. The great man was born in 1840 in Bockhampton and died at the beginning of 1928 at his house in Maxgate that he had built himself. He was an architect long before he was a writer. And on that subject, his actual first love was poetry. He turned to novels because they made money. After Jude the Obscure and all of the PR hoo-ha that came after it, he went back to his first love, poetry. But he continued to write short stories all the way through, and for that we are very grateful. Hardy's works are famously set in Wessex. Wessex was once a kingdom in England, along with Mercia and others. However, these kingdoms became a country. Dorset, but not just Dorset, is included in Hardy's Wessex. We also have Off Wessex, which is Cornwall, where he met his first wife, Emma, where he set a lot of his poetry, especially the poems of 12 to 13, after she died, and where he set a pair of blue eyes. But most of his novels are here in Wessex, Dorset and its outer regions. Wessex is a wonderful place which Hardy described as his partly real, partly dream country. You can visit any location from any of his works and see it almost as he saw it in his day.
I'm aware of Thomas Hardy as an author. I haven't read any of his novels, but I'm aware, especially living in this area, quite aware of it.
I did know about Thomas Hardy before this. I've been living in Dorset for about 12 years and only discovered Hardy maybe 6 years ago through my association with a choir in which I sing, and my then joining the New Hardy Players, a group of players who are recreating the original Hardy Players ethos by only performing Thomas Hardy plays. Thomas Hardy was a fantastic observer of life, a complicated man, wonderful poet as well as novel writer, but his observation of people's lives and their reaction to circumstances that changed their lives was really quite insightful, and we're very fortunate that he took the time to put this down on paper in novel form, so we're all able to see who we are, where we are in one of his novels.
I'm from Dorset and I was familiar with Thomas Hardy's novels, but not the short stories, and they're really special.
So obviously I knew he was a Victorian English novelist and poet. I've always enjoyed Tessa the d'Urbervilles. And it's interesting working on these pieces because although he's got a reputation for depressing novels, these earlier works sort of opened my eyes to his interest in the supernatural and at times very comical characters actually, and situations, albeit sort of dark comedy.
Before the project I knew a bit about Thomas Hardy, but obviously I learnt a lot more during the filming and also did some research beforehand. So yes, I learnt a lot about Thomas Hardy. And it was nice to go to Maxgate and Hardy's cottage and find out more about him there.
So you are asking yourself, Rose, why are you even doing this thing? because it's fun and I enjoy a challenge and I get to have fun with friends and wear Victorian outfits and film it. Secondarily, the other reason why I'm specifically doing 19th century adaptations of novels is because I have beef with the people that do 19th century adaptations of novels, right? So I find reading 19th century literature a little difficult because they are a little verbose and a little dense. I am fascinated by their stories, and when I am able to have somebody explain it to me or listen to audiobooks or watch it in movies, I am fascinated and I find it very interesting. And I also find that most audiobooks of these things are read by Americans, which, and I mean this with no offense, actually no, I'm going to be... Also, the other beef I have is the BBC only adapts the same 6 novels every single year. Oliver Twist, again. Great Expectations, again. Jane Austen, again. It's like we have so many books that they could have done, and they pick the same 3 books. And also, whenever they do pick any kind of 19th century literature, they pick the serious ones, the tragedies, the deep, thoughtful things, and it's like... The last good adaptation of something interesting was Middlemarch in 1994. Like, the 90s was a really good time for period drama, in my personal opinion. It just went downhill from there. And I wish to revive the vibe of the 90s. Originally I thought, hey, I could adapt one of Thomas Hardy's novels. Then I realised that to adapt Thomas Hardy's novels I would require a budget, which I do not have. As you probably noticed, we do not have a budget. So instead I thought, alright, let's downscale a little bit. Does he do short stories? And yes, he does do short stories. A lot of short stories, and quite a few of them involve peasants. Now, I mean this with no offence to peasants. They are significantly easier to film and or fake because they don't have all the complex stuff the upper class has. So if you're going to try and film historical dramas on no budget, peasants are a good way to start. But then I didn't just want to do one short film because I never do things by half. So my mother Anne-Marie, who is a historical novel period British drama enthusiast, found 4 short stories and sent them to me, and I read them and thought, hey, these are quite fun. And then she did the first treatment of them because I tend to get a bit lost in the verboseness. So she did the first treatment of them. So I go through and clean up the lines and make it more so that we can film it, and update it a bit and dial down the wombling, hopefully. So we ended up with 4 short films, each one theoretically roughly 20 minutes long. We had 3 ghost stories and 1 comedy. Well, sort of ghost stories. A superstitious man involves a ghost. The Withered Arm involves something spooky. What the Shepherd Saw involves a murder, so that technically has a ghost. And then The 3 Strangers is the silly, funny Scooby-Doo thing that I like at the end. So when it came to scheduling this thing, originally what I normally do is I work with students. Now, the thing about students is they have their summer holidays off, but I'm not working with students this time. I'm working with mature actors who are adults who do not have summer holidays off. So we decided each short film would have 2 weekends. So 4 short films, 2 weekends each, 8 weekends. But then obviously people have lives to live, so I couldn't do 8 weekends in a row, otherwise someone might try and stab me. So instead we did roughly about 2 weekends a month. Oddly enough, we actually ended up using about 6 of those 8 weekends, which I was quite happy about, and I think a lot of everybody else was quite happy about. I just want to say thank you so much to the amazing people who sort of travelled all the way down here and stayed over. You scare me slightly. Thanks! Anyway, yeah, so the scheduling was pretty easy. We basically organised ourselves between our we organised ourselves by location, basically, and whoever could turn up at that location. For costumes, because we were dealing with the peasant classes, because we were dealing with the poorer classes of Britain in the Victorian era, we didn't need overly complicated costumes. All we basically needed was a vaguely historically looking white blouse. Yes, unfortunately, a lot of The Superstitious Man was shot with a short sleeve blouse, which is not historically accurate. I am aware of this, but I only realised that after we finished shooting, so that just happened. Anyway, basically, the way this thing was set up was that even if we hadn't managed to get our hands on to any kind of costumes, blouses from secondhand stores and an average plain coloured skirt would have worked just fine. Thankfully, though, we were saved by the Royal Manor Theatre of Portland, who also very kindly lent us their location. They very kindly lent us quite a few costumes. So the Superstitious Man is entirely wardrobed from the RMT wardrobe. Thank you so much to you amazing people. And then later on, we met the amazing lady called Lou, who runs the wardrobe that belongs to the Hardy players. Their wardrobe is more specifically Hardy and Victorian related, whereas the Royal Manor Theatre is more specifically a vaguely, theatrical wardrobe. One of my favourite ones was the yellow mustard cape and skirt that is seen in The Superstitious Man on the young lady. I personally want a tiny yellow mustard velvet cape now, but yeah, so basically we were wardrobed by these two theatre groups, which was very kind of them. And of course some people brought things from their own home, waistcoats, shirts, accessories, etc. Okay, so this is one of our sets for The Superstitious Man. We're filming it in the Portland Royal Manor Theatre. We're using their stage because I wanted very much to get a sort of void, dark background and very specifically lit up things. So we worked a lot with small LED panels and a few spotlights. Take inspiration from Caravaggio and the season 8 of Game of Thrones, which basically is to make all your shots so dark that you can't see the background. From this concept art, you can actually see the ideas that I had, and frankly, we managed to get a lot of this right. I think it worked. I justify this by saying that A, Victorian peasants would not have, a lot of lighting in their rooms. B, a lot of our stuff are either ghost stories and or set at night, so that works. And C, it's called art, darling. It's called art. It's very hard work to find crew outside of London, especially crew with gear. I managed to find some chaps from the Weymouth Movie Makers Club, and they were absolute peachy darlings and did an amazing job. So we managed to find an amazing camera person who came all the way down from London, unpaid, is an amazing person, to do camera, and he of course brought his camera, but of course, you can't expect people to travel this far for 8 weekends in a row, unpaid and all this, so he was only able to give us his time for the first weekend shooting. It was great fun though. It really did take the pressure off me for that first weekend so we can figure stuff out. For the rest of the shoot, I decided this is a bit ridiculous that I have no gear, so I decided to do it myself. I can't afford a full, big, fancy, complicated camera, and also for the thing we're shooting, it is unnecessarily complex to have one of those cameras. So I realized that all I needed was 4K and a lot of data space. So do you know what does 4K? iPhones. iPhones shoot in 4K. And there's a whole bunch of interesting free-to-use apps which allow you to do basic filming. It's also the most Gen Z thing I could think of doing, so it turns out also, by the way, that iPhone filmmaking gear is so much cheaper. I mean, for example, if you want to buy a gimbal for a camera that's good, that's going to put you back at least $2K. Want to buy a gimbal for an iPhone that's relatively good? Oh, $200 max. Interestingly enough, also filming on a phone and being my own camera person sped up the filming process by at least 100%. Shots that had normally taken good half an hour to an hour to set up could be done in about 20 minutes. I could put that little thing in a rig and move around the set so much easier. It's so much easier shooting on an iPhone for what I'm currently doing. I'm not shooting The Matrix, so I don't need anything complicated.